nervous because I'm here now.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin here with my co-host James Haskell and a familiar face and friend of the show, Evan Washburn from CBS Sports. Thanks for coming on with us, Evan.
You got it, guys. Good to be with you. Happy New Year's, by the way.
Likewise.
Yeah, you as well. Absolutely. Jimmy, I know you're excited, so get us started.
That's right. So, Evan, one of the things that, and like Glenn said, we appreciate you coming on, taking the time. But one of the things Glenn and I have been talking about, the feel of this 5-game win streak feels different. Last year, we ended, on a 12-game, the Ravens did, ended on a 12-game winning streak. But now it feels like they're almost playing better going into playoffs this year than they did last. And there's a lot out in front of him now. So I know we have the benefit of hindsight when talking about last year, but it feels like they're peaking at the right time, right, rather than coasting. Does that make any sense? Do you feel that as well about this team?
Yeah, I could buy that. And I really, it's funny. I mean, you do so many of these from my position, but I really do go back to our conversation, whenever that was. I really can't remember at this point. Each week kind of blends into one another. But I do remember being on this Zoom with you guys and saying that Baltimore is more comfortable when the chips are down and everybody's doubting them and they need to dig themselves out of a hole, and then they capture the momentum at the right part of the season. And that's what I think they have right now. And it really, to me, is eerily similar to the Super Bowl season in 2012, where, I mean, they literally needed to win in San Diego at that point, and Ray Rice does his thing. And similarly, they needed to win Monday night in Cleveland, and Lamar does whatever he has to do and comes out and leads his team. And then they, boom, capture some momentum, and they've gone through hell and back with COVID. I mean, it really, to me, lines up in a lot of ways. And look, that's fun for us as a narrative and comparison game, which players and coaches hate to do. But I do think, to your initial point, they've captured this sort of galvanizing us against the world mentality where I think they're more comfortable, and they're just playing really well, and they seem to have found their identity at the right time.
Yeah, I like hearing that. That gets me excited. Well, when I was watching the results of last week's game, and it was kind of unsure if we were going to play the Colts or if the Ravens were going to take on the Titans. I was kind of torn because I feel like the matchup might be slightly in our favor more with the Colts than it is with the Titans. Obviously, recent history shows that. But at the same time, when I look for a satisfaction standpoint, I mean, man, and from a football fan standpoint, I'm excited to see this matchup for the third time. So how's the football fan inside of you? How pumped are you to see these teams go together or go at it again for the third time in less than a year?
I couldn't agree with you more, Glenn. I mean, I'm excited. I've got a Saturday game, 1:00 in Buffalo. So I'll be home Saturday night, and I'll be able to wake up and be like you two and just be a fan of football and be able to watch this game at 1:00 on a Sunday. I haven't done that. I can't even remember the last time. And I was thinking about it today. I mean, this is, I think, the best game of the weekend. And look, we're close to it because we live in this city, and we know the history, both long-term with the Titans, but obviously in the immediate, when you go back to the playoffs last year and then week 11 this season. I think that builds a great baseline for what is also just a great matchup in terms of identities. These are both two really tough teams that obviously want to run the ball. And I think Baltimore has some edge in certain key areas. Most notably, I think when their defense is playing well, it's much better than the Titans' defense. But man, the Titans seem to have something on Baltimore up until this point. So all those things, you put them together. And again, I do think it's the best matchup of the weekend.
Man, I can't wait. I'm going to be like a kid on Christmas morning, Sunday morning for sure. Some fans, of course, going into this offseason, some fans have talked about how the results of this postseason could be a big factor in how much the Ravens are willing to invest in Lamar Jackson for the long term. Do you agree with that? Some form of postseason success needs to be seen before they're able to give him an extension that's similar to a Mahomes or a Watson, despite his incredible regular season success?
There's a lot there, James. I would say this. I am completely against attaching record, whether it be regular season or playoff, to a quarterback. This is a team game to the nth degree, and I think it's just lazy. We do it on our side of things, and we put graphics up, and this quarterback has a career record of X and Y and against this team postseason. And I don't buy it. I do think that his performance in playoff games should be used in the evaluation of the front office and of the coaching staff to determine how much they want to invest in Lamar long term. But saying that he's 0-2 or whatever, 0-2 in the playoffs, to me is just lazy. I just don't buy it because, yeah, he didn't play really well his rookie year. I kind of put that aside for all the obvious reasons. And last year, he wasn't at his best. But man, I was on that sideline. There was dudes dropping balls that don't normally drop balls. The defense didn't play well at all. That team earned that loss. So that's how I view sort of what the playoff record means to a quarterback when it comes to the investment and how much is on the line monetarily for Lamar on Sunday. I can't imagine it's an incredible gap in terms of what they'd be willing to invest in him, whether he wins, they win, he plays well, he plays great in that sense. I think you have to see a Joe Flacco like run to really change your market value. I don't think it happens with just one game.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, it seems like all the offseason moves this past offseason were really geared to stop the guy they're about to face, and that's Derrick Henry. Of course, I mean, when I'm talking about Calais Campbell, Derek Wolfe in free agency, and obviously Patrick Queen and others in the draft. Now, Calais and, of course, Brandon were forced to miss that Week 11 matchup. But from what you've seen from Calais and the rest of those guys in the other games that they were able to play, do you think that they're up for the task of trying to slow down Derrick Henry?
I do, because I think they wear that. And I know that from talking to Calais, going back to training camp and early portion of the season. They know why they were brought in, and they didn't get a chance to prove it in that moment in Week 11. Actually talking to Derek Wolfe this week about that. And look, he gave credit to the rookies and the young guys that had to step in when Brandon and Calais were out, but he acknowledged, I mean, it's a different degree of defense, especially defensive line, when they have Calais and Brandon there. And then on the back end, as you start to creep out and Patrick being where he is, he's not a rookie anymore at this point. So I do think that there's a reality to that they all have to and embrace when it comes to why they were brought in. It's to stop Derrick Henry. And Derek Wolfe, most notably, was right there with the opportunity to make that tackle in overtime. And he said it. I mean, he thinks about it all the time, and now it's a chance to try and have some redemption as a group.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. But one thing I want to do is kind of flip the coin and look at the other side of it. The Titans might have the best running back in the league in Derrick Henry, but they aren't the best running team in the NFL. Of course, that would be the Baltimore Ravens. What chance do you give that Titans 19th ranked run defense slowing down the NFL's best rushing attack, led by, of course, Lamar Jackson and J.K. Dobbins and even Gus Edwards?
I think that's Baltimore's greatest advantage in terms of this game. It's, yes, their run game being the strength, but really it's Tennessee's inability defensively over the course of this season to capture any sort of consistency. And look, their run defense isn't great, but they also have really not shown the ability to get after the passer. So I don't think Baltimore should completely ignore the passing game in this one, because I do think there's plays to be made there. And just the third down defense for Tennessee has been really, really poor. So look, Mike Vrabel's a guy who I put at the top of most lists, along with John Harbaugh as head coaches. He's had a lot on his plate this year, as all these guys had, and they just haven't been able to come up with that formula defensively. So I do think that's an area where if Baltimore can get going early, much like they have in games where they played well and they didn't when they played Tennessee in the playoffs last year, that would be huge for them.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of people say that as long as they stick to the ground, stick to what they do, stick to what got them here, they can get it done. But I think you're right in touching on this pass defense for the Tennessee Titans. It leaves a lot to be desired as well. And with with Clowney being out, the pass rush is definitely limited. So do you agree in the sense that they're gonna have to pass the ball to some level of success if they're gonna win the game?
No doubt. I think that the biggest thing is just do not stray from whatever has gotten you to this point in that 5-game arena. I mean, you talk to coaches as they head into the postseason, and one of the biggest things they say, and they're almost speaking it into existence, is that you have to edit yourself. You have to fight that desire to overcoach, to overscheme, to overthink, because the stakes are what they are. It's in you as a competitor and as a group of people that just want to prepare to the nth degree, you have to step back and just not keep it simple and not necessarily just do exactly what you've done. You still want to throw those wrinkles in there, but just don't overthink it. So I think that the pass needs to be part of the equation, but not something like we saw maybe the early portion of the season with this team where they're out to prove something just because of what the Titans lack defensively when it comes to a pass rush or an ability to make plays in the secondary.
I'll tell you what, that pertains to football in real life and fantasy football when you're in the championship game. Don't over tinker, right? Just stick, maybe
this
make a couple
of person
changes.
who came in second place.
I was going to say, this sounds like a bit of outward therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, absolutely. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is I've noticed there's been a lot of debate about what the keys to victory are here. Some people have said that, some people in different programs have said it's about who can be the best passing attack based on the likelihood of, the running attacks kind of coming out even in the wash. Some people have said it's just like John always says, we're going to stop the run and we're going to run the ball. That's kind of where I see it, and not necessarily being one thing. But what do you see as the keys to this game as far as, what they would be for the Titans if they want to come out with a win, and what they would be for the Ravens?
Well, I think for Baltimore, their ability to stop the run is more important than Tennessee's, because I think Tennessee's happy to play a shootout. They've been forced to do that over the course of this season. And we haven't touched on it, but they are dynamic in the passing game as well. They have a quality tight end. A.J. Brown is an emerging star. Corey Davis has been solid all season long. Ryan Tannehill, he's not Lamar, but he can make plays with his legs. Their play action game is fantastic. Arthur Smith's been really the Greg Roman of 2019 in a lot of ways. So I think that Baltimore's ability to take Derrick Henry, not out of the game, because that's just not going to happen, but be deliberate and consistent over the course of 4 quarters to just make it a grind for him is really important for Baltimore. And I think that the special teams for both these sides is going to be a big factor, because I think it's going to be a close game. It could be high scoring, and even in a high scoring or low scoring game, the ability to flip the field position game, Tucker making a deep kick, whatever it might be. And you've got 2 quality special teams units. I mean, I'm not exactly sure right now as we stand what the Titans kicker situation is. I know they had a practice squad guy up who made a big kick in a big moment last week, but they've got Brett Kern, who's like Sam Cook, a great punter. So I think special teams too for Baltimore is an area they've got to win and then stopping the run. And for Tennessee, I think just managing whatever Baltimore's run game is. I mean, you can't almost look at the numbers, because when you're putting up 400 yards in a game, I mean, almost holding Baltimore to, near 200 on the ground is kind of a win. And then, force some takeaways. That's one thing Tennessee's defense has been able to do in some games, is take the ball away.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know that is the great equalizer in a lot of games, the takeaway. Well, Evan, can you give us a prediction on what you see coming out the wash at 1 o'clock?
Yeah, I guess I can. I'm not calling this game, so I'm not beholden by any of the.
I'm writing it down.
Broadcaster ethics. Look, I think beating a team 3 times is challenging. I think there's a reality to that, and I do lack a confidence in Tennessee's ability, if Baltimore is going to be what they've been offensively, to slow them down. So I like Baltimore in this game in a close one. So maybe something in that 28-24 range.
All right.
Yeah. Sounds like it's coming down to a kick, and I like our chances if it did that. But I wanted to ask you one more question about the AFC North, because I feel like it's clear who the best team or the best division is, with 3 teams now representing the North in the playoffs. But also, I've heard other people say, no, it's not that. It's just that the North got to play the NFC East. And I mean, as bad as they were just benefited from that. So what's your take? Is the AFC North this year's best division?
I think in a year where the lack of depth, and especially in the AFC side, where it was spread thin, but then it seemed top heavy at portions of the season. So the way I would view it is, for a large portion of the season, it felt like the NFC West was probably the deepest and best division, but Arizona fell off at the back half. San Francisco dealt with a ton of injuries, and I'm just not sure how good Seattle is, because their defense has just been so poor. So I don't necessarily think the AFC North has the 3 best teams in a lot of ways, but I would say it's the deepest, because I'm confident in Baltimore's ability to make a run. I think Pittsburgh can definitely make a run. And Cleveland, despite all their troubles and what they're going through right now and their up and down season, they made the postseason. So 3 teams in, you got 2, I would say, legit Super Bowl AFC championship game contenders in Pittsburgh and Baltimore, and then Cleveland, who's in it.
Yeah, so let's stay on the Browns really quickly here. We have to get your take, of course, on their current situation. Even though we're Ravens fans, Glenn and I, of course, we really feel bad for the Cleveland fans, the Cleveland Browns fans, based on what they're going through as far as COVID goes, and Stefanski and a number of other coaches getting COVID testing positive. They finally make the playoffs in a number of years. Looks like they're going to be without a bunch of key players and their head coach. What are you hearing about how the Browns are preparing for this game? Is the game still on schedule? Is there any chance of it changing? And then do you know if it's possible, like we've seen broadcasters broadcast remotely, is it going to be possible for Stefanski to participate remotely?
As I understand it, guys, and look, this is ever changing as we sit here on a Wednesday night. Who knows what tomorrow will hold and bring in terms of news. But look, first of all, I would agree. I think it's terrible what Cleveland's going through. Baltimore went through it about a month ago or 6 weeks ago, and some other teams every team's dealt with it in some degree, but just the timing of it for Cleveland. And you mentioned it, Kevin Stefanski, who we've actually, as a crew, we had him last week, and to see the excitement, to get to talk to Baker Mayfield after that game, to talk to Kevin Stefanski in the hours and a day leading up to it, and know what they put into this thing, and to have it all kind of grabbed in a lot of ways from them, and who knows what they'll be able to do Sunday night. But as I understand it, there's no ability for coaches to contribute on game day remotely, and I would not imagine that this game would be adjusted in terms of schedule at this point. But again, things can change every minute.
Yeah, that's a shame. But I know we've talked about this on the program before, that sometimes these situations can kind of galvanize a team, and at least for 1 week they can play that inspired football and really make things happen. So I wouldn't count them out just yet, even though they're definitely behind the 8 ball. But I wanted to ask you also quickly about the NFC. A lot of big names over on the NFC with Tom Brady now joining the crew. What are your thoughts on the NFC in general, and who do you see coming out of there?
I love Green Bay. I just love how they're playing. I love how it sets up for them. They got the 1 seed, obviously get a bye, which is nice. Again, this is all, we just coming off this discussion about Browns and COVID. That's the biggest opponent over the next month for all of us, really. Whether you're calling the games or you're playing or coaching these games. But all things equal, I just love where Green Bay is, because Aaron Rodgers, to me, is the MVP. He's playing at such a comfort level. He seems to, almost playing at a different speed, and everyone around him is on his level. Their defense is good enough. And largely the fact that I would like Tampa and I would like New Orleans, one of those two, to come out and play them in an NFC championship game. And I think that the edge would go largely to Green Bay in that situation because of who they have on their team, but also just the benefit of the elements. Tom will be comfortable in Green Bay, but I don't think anyone else on that Tampa Bay team, other than maybe Antonio Brown because of his Pittsburgh days, is going to know what that's like.
Yeah, and do you see any teams, whether AFC or NFC, do you see any teams as, what people like to call dark horses?
Baltimore. I really do. I think that, and look, they're probably not necessarily a dark horse based off of the expectations, but everybody had this team pretty much, down and out, largely based off of just what they went through with COVID and how it ravaged their month there in November. But I think they've got that belief right now. And I do think that on the NFC side, Tampa Bay is a team that has all the components. Their defense is really good at times, and they have arguably the greatest quarterback of all time under center, and they have a bevy of playmakers around him. But it's just so new, and it's largely my lack of confidence in them being able to make a run is rooted in the fact that they're going to have to win 3 games in a row and play really well in 3. Oh, I should say probably just 2 games, because beating Washington, I don't think they have to play at their best. But I think that they haven't shown against quality competition to be able to string a number of games together.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it's definitely going to be interesting. Glenn and I were debating before we hopped on the show if nationally how people viewed the Ravens in comparison to in-house, because I feel like locally, we don't see ourselves as a dark horse, but I think certainly a lot of people do nationally.
They
based
do.
On
Don't
based
worry.
on what you mentioned.
They
Yeah,
do.
no, absolutely. So now one last question before we let you go here, Evan. Do you regularly going into the playoffs announce your Super Bowl picks? Is this something you've talked about or even contemplated?
Sounds like he likes Green Bay on one side.
Yeah, no, I've done this publicly. I'll admit prior to the season on a show we have it on CBS Sports Network with Adam Shine, I had the Cowboys and the Chiefs. I had the Cowboys and the Ravens, and I had the Ravens beating the Cowboys in the Super Bowl. So that was my preseason pick. So one side is embarrassing, and then the other side, I still got some life. And then I think recently I went for some poll we had to do at the midseason point. I went Kansas City and Green Bay, and that's probably where I'd land if you ask me right now.
Yeah, I think that's the consensus for a lot of people as well. Evan, we appreciate your time. I know that it is highly valuable, so we appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to spend it with us. Enjoy your trip up to Buffalo. Stay warm. Bring your hand warmers, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, you guys enjoy the weekend. Always good to be with you. And yeah, man, good luck this weekend.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Have
man.
a good one.